I know this tune, but I don't know these words. I guess I don't actually know this song. The older sister worker turned to me and she said, you need to start coming to more meetings. She's like, you don't understand what we're trying to do here. I remember people saying to me, oh, it's so good that you're doing foster care because this might be the only chance those kids get to hear the gospel. I remember just panicking and thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't know any of these things. Was I in a cult? Like, you could just feel all the judgment on you. But I never felt like it was enough. I never felt like I was doing good enough. After I left, a couple months after I left, I remembered something from that letter, and it was the term 2x2. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm gonna look it up and see, because I thought, I've never heard that term before. My background and like where I'd come from and what I believed about things. And so I went into meetings thinking everybody else thinks the same way that I do, because you just assume, I guess. All of this time, for years, I thought he believed the same that I did. My husband is in a cult. I have been in a cult. All of these people that we had built relationships with were just gone, just like that. When you go to meetings, basically the workers are the head of the household. Brainwashing, for lack of a better term, happened so subtly without me knowing what was even going on in my own mind. Don't just accept somebody's answer as what's truth.
Hey guys, it is a beautiful spring day in South Dakota. We don't have spring until May or June sometimes. But once in a while we'll get a few nice days. So we've had a couple days in the 70s and it's been great. So this next interview is, it's not actually going to be an interview, it's going to be more of a story. But just her sharing her story. But it's somebody who didn't grow up going to meetings and wasn't born and raised and joined, if I'll say that loosely, but joined when she was 18 or 19. And that's my wife. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background on my side of the story, on why I was dating somebody who didn't go to meetings, why I married somebody who wasn't born and raised, and just kind of give you a little bit of background before she shares her story. So I don't remember for sure, but really, really early on when I was a young child, I remembered having, I don't know if it was a dream or if it was just some thoughts that I had. I'm not really sure. But I always thought that I was either going to go into work or get married to an outsider. And I'm not really sure why. But deep down, those two choices were points, if you will. So you've got professing, you've got baptism, and then if you go into work, you have more time to study, and then maybe you'll be good enough. And if that doesn't work, then you get married, and if you find somebody who from the outside and you bring them in, well, that's got to be worth some extra bonus points. But anyways, so I always thought that I was going to, if I was going to get married, it'd be from somebody that doesn't go to meetings. That being said, we met at work, and I was moving away to live with my brother for a while right after graduation, and for whatever reason I asked for her phone number, which was weird because I never did that, and she gave it to me, which she also said was weird. But anyways, so we texted back and forth for the next couple months and got to know each other, and we had a lot in common, and I think we only dated for like 9 months officially before we got married. So we had known each other for a few years though, because we had worked with each other for a few years prior to that. But anyways, so that's just a little tiny bit of background of how we met, and she's going to just sit down and share her story with you. She didn't want me to interview her, which is fine. That'd be kind of awkward. But she's just going to sit down and share her story with you and kind of give you some perspective of what it would be like from an outsider coming in, and then like why she didn't see, as a Christian, why she didn't see some of the red flags, if you will, right away. So anyways, I'll just finish it up with that, and then she will sit down with you and share her story.
Hi, my name is Merissa. David is my husband, and he asked me a while ago if I would do a video interview with him to share on his channel. I wasn't sure about doing an interview because my story isn't the same as a lot of the people that he's had on the channel. I wasn't born into meetings, and so I wasn't sure that anybody wanted to listen to my story. So I was like, well, no, you've got more interesting people to interview. And the more messages that we got and from people and just hearing other people's stories made me a little bit more confident in being able to do an interview that somebody might listen to. So I decided that that was fine, but I didn't want to do the interview style that he typically does because I felt like it would be weird to be interviewed by my husband. So I just made some notes, and I'm just going to have a chat with you today, I guess, and share my story. It's not quite the same as a lot of them on this channel, but I still feel like it's the right time to share, and I'm ready to do it. I have shared my story with a lot of friends and family, but I've never shared it with the public before, so this is new for me. I just hope that it benefits somebody by listening, or somebody else can relate. So, like I said, I was not raised going to meetings. I was just raised in a traditional Christian household. We went to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, and I was a very active participant. I did Awana all my growing up years, went with the church youth group to all kinds of different places. I did mission trips, helped served in soup kitchens. We were very active members of our church. My family even helped plant a church when I was later in high school. Church was a big thing for my family. I also want to preface my interview by saying that I grew up homeschooled. And so by doing that, I knew a lot of different types of people. We were pretty conservative Christian, but we weren't really conservative in the way that we dressed. I didn't wear dresses all the time or skirts or anything, but I did know a lot of people that were like that. So when I first met David and started going to gospel meetings with him, seeing a lot of people in dresses and skirts, that wasn't really abnormal for me. I just figured, well, they're just, a little extra conservative, but I did know people like that when I was growing up. So I didn't feel like it was too weird or too out of the ordinary. So me and David started dating when we were about 17 or 18. I can't remember, but quite young. I don't remember quite how long, after a while, he started inviting me to go to gospel meeting with him. And I felt like that was kind of weird because, one, I felt like church was supposed to be on Sunday morning and gospel meeting was in the afternoon. But David just explained it as, well, we have like this Bible study type of thing on Wednesdays and on Sunday mornings, and then we have gospel meetings on Sunday afternoons, and that's more of like the church style, like traditional preaching or whatever that I would have been used to. So I started going with him to gospel meetings. I knew that for me, dating was not just a fun thing. I was dating with the intent of being married, and I knew that it was important for me someday to obviously go to church with my husband and be on the same page with that. So I felt pretty good about going to gospel meetings. I really liked when I went with him, I really liked that everybody seemed really close. Like it was like this little community. Everybody was really friendly. I liked the little group, and it seemed like the person that was up there teaching was preaching just straight from the Bible. There wasn't any weird books used or anything. I didn't really have any red flags like right off the bat. Like I said, I did think, well, everybody's a little bit more conservative than I am here, mostly in dress. But that wasn't really something that bothered me, because like I said, I grew up with quite a few people that wore dresses and skirts on a regular basis. And while I didn't wear them like on a regular basis, I was fairly used to wearing them to like go to church or something, because we always dressed up just a little bit to go to church. Nothing super crazy, but wearing a dress to church was not out of the question. I don't think I realized that women wore dresses and skirts all the time. I thought it was, just we're dressing up, so we look a little bit better for Sunday. But either way, I didn't really have any red flags right away. I did not go to Sunday morning or Wednesday night meetings until after we were married. So that was not something that I had experience with. Had I have gone to those before, I'm not sure what I would have thought, or if I would have had a different opinion. But anyway, so that was kind of how it started when we first got married. I did feel like it was important for me to go to David's church. He didn't seem interested in going to my church, and I was very young, and so I didn't really question it. I was like, well, this seems okay, so I'm just going to go with it. And like I said, there wasn't any red flags right away. So we got married right after I turned 19. So we were still quite young. And then I did start going to Wednesday night and Sunday morning meetings. I had, thoughts coming in from being an outsider. I did feel like everybody seemed very serious about their faith, at least on Wednesdays and Sundays. I didn't really have a chance to get to know too many people right away outside of that meeting setting. So I felt like that was nice. Like it was good that everybody seemed serious. I didn't quite understand why everyone seemed so depressed. Like that's the only word that I can think of when I went. There was no joyfulness. It was like very serious. I'm trying so hard to do this thing. And I guess in my mind, I just took it to mean, well, they're just trying to be repentant or something. I just kind of pushed it off a little bit. But in the back of my mind, I was always kind of thinking that Sunday mornings especially seemed quite depressing to me going to meeting. So one thing that I want you to understand, because a lot of people ask me this question, well, how did you not know it was what it was right off the bat, and how did I get involved? Like I said, I was very involved with the church and stuff growing up. But I was pretty bullied when I was in high school for a number of different reasons. But, most of people in my youth group thought of me as some kind of like goody-goody. I was the one that memorized the Bible verses and went on the mission trips and stuff. And it's funny that was like looked down on from the other people in my youth group, but it was. And so I always felt like I was just kind of on the fringes, and it didn't stop me from participating and doing things with my youth group, but I did feel like I wasn't a valued member of the community. And so that was one thing that drew me in when I first started going to gospel meetings, is that everybody felt like such a tight community. And I really loved that. I really wanted to be a part of an active Christian community. And so it seemed to me from the outside that that's kind of what it was. And I was excited to dive into that further and see what it might mean for me and for our marriage and our life going forward. So that was kind of my perspective. But you also have to remember that I went in with the eyes of my upbringing. And so in my mind, I didn't ask questions. I just thought, well, everybody here, they're preaching from the Bible. And so everybody here must believe the same thing that I do, right? And I know now that that was an extremely naive way of thinking, and there's definitely things that I should have asked. But, everything is in hindsight. I didn't think of that at the time. And I didn't ask the questions that I should have asked. But anyway, those were kind of the things that drew me in the beginning. And I know that some of my friends are going to watch this that don't have any experience with legalistic groups, with cults and stuff like this. And so they always ask me when I've told my story, well, I don't understand how you could not see that it was a cult or that it was this different kind of group to begin with. But it's not like they stand at a pulpit and preach at you all this crazy wild stuff and people are doing weird things and whatever. David likes to say that the devil is really smart, and 99% of a lie is actually truth. There's just this small part that isn't true and that draws you away. And it's very true, because there's so many aspects to there was so many aspects to going to meeting that were a good thing. Community is a good thing. Reading the Bible is a good thing. I just didn't know what the actual theology was or anything like that from the beginning. Knowing what I know now, and I would have asked any questions, but I would have asked completely different questions going into it. But I was young, and even though I was taught when I was growing up, we learned about different religions and we learned about different cultures. We read about the Buddhists, and we read about the Muslims and the Jewish people and all these different things. But there was no teaching on like how to identify, for lack of a better term, a cult, or how to identify legalistic theology. I didn't know that just coming out of high school. So that's kind of why I ended up getting involved and really didn't think anything of it until years later. So our early married years, going to meetings and stuff, we did okay. I felt like people were generally friendly. I did have some trouble with other girls that went to meetings that were my age. I kind of just chalked it up to jealousy. Like, I took a eligible bachelor as an outsider. I took an eligible bachelor from their group, and I don't know. It was just kind of really weird. I felt a lot of judgment, especially from the younger girls that were my age, but I just kind of, just shoved it aside like I was a happy newlywed. And I believed that it was important that me and my husband were on the same page with church, and we were going to church together. Like, that was something that we were doing together. And so I just kind of shoved that stuff aside and was like, I am going to be a good wife. And I felt like I knew the formula to be able to do that. And so I'm going to support my husband. And still, I wasn't questioning things, so I didn't find anything wrong with what we were doing or learning. After starting to go to Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, I did feel like some things were a little different than what I was used to. But at the same time, like, I'd grown up going to the same church. We always went to an evangelical church. And so, like, I just kind of thought, well, maybe this is what another denomination is like. And they did call themselves non-denominational, but I just kind of was like, oh, other denominations have different things that I'm just not quite used to. And so just kind of put any doubts aside, didn't have any huge red flags right off the bat. So me and David were quite poor when we first got married. As you can imagine, we were 19 and, didn't have the greatest jobs. So our first house was pretty small, and we didn't have room for the workers to spend the night. I didn't have a special room that I could dedicate to them. And so we couldn't do that. So I couldn't ever have workers spend the night at our house, but we could have them over for meals or have them over for the afternoon or something. So we did that pretty often in our new, first couple years of marriage. We'd have them over, and David would have me get out the fancy plates that we had, and we'd have the best meal that I could scrounge up on a budget. And, I tried my hardest, and I always felt like we were bad because we didn't have a room for them to stay at, and we didn't have money to give the workers. But I was a couponer, so I always had shampoo and kind of basic stuff, and I always felt like, well, I have to give them some things because they don't have anything, they're homeless, and so it was important that I did what I could. And I always felt like at least I was doing what I could, and I, did it out of a generous heart. I felt like it must have just been how our field was, but I felt like we had a lot of younger sister workers in our field, and I always got along with them pretty well. I don't ever remember the conversations being about anything spiritual, but I felt like when they came to our house, we always had good conversations, and I enjoyed having them around. And it was, since I did not get along the greatest with the other girls that went to meeting that were my age, it was nice to have those younger sister workers in the house, because I felt like, well, not everybody hates me. I enjoyed having them over to the house, and like I said, I would always do what I could for them. I had some incidences with some older workers that, to me, felt very entitled, I guess, to different things in a certain way of treatment, which I always thought was weird, having grown up around, more humble pastors. And so I always thought that was kind of weird, but there wasn't anything too crazy. I guess I'll share one story that has always just stuck in my mind as really odd. So I can't remember, we'd been married for a couple years, and Joe Hobbs was our overseer at the time, and he was coming to our house for lunch. And of course we had to prepare the best thing that we could because it was the overseer coming to our house. And so I'm pretty sure we made steak, which I don't even know how we afforded to buy steak, but I'm pretty sure that that's what we made. And after our meal and a little conversation, Joe asked me if I had a bobby pin that I would wear in my hair. And I was like, well, yeah. And I was thinking, what on earth is he asking me for a bobby pin? So I went in the bathroom and I got him a bobby pin and handed it to him, thinking, what is he going to do with this? Is there some teaching that's coming out of this or something? And I gave him the bobby pin, and he proceeded to pick his teeth with the bobby pin. And I was so mortified that he would take my, bobby pins aren't a big deal. It's just like a ponytail or something. But he would take something I wore in my hair and pick his teeth instead of a toothpick. And I just thought, I didn't think it was like a red flag or anything. It was just a weird situation to be in, especially after I felt like I had served them such a nice meal and I was trying to be such a good hostess. And here he was picking his teeth with a bobby pin, with my bobby pin. Anyway, another odd thing that kind of came up that actually was one of my first red flags was, and I don't remember, it was very early on in our marriage, but we must have been spending the night at my in-laws' house. And of course, it was Sunday. We were having breakfast there on Sunday morning, and so we were getting ready to go to Sunday morning meeting. And I started having an allergic reaction from the breakfast that I was eating. I was having trouble in my breathing. My throat was closing up, and of course, that kind of induced like a panic attack. And I was just having all the struggles, and I just remember, nobody even went and told David. I don't know where he was at. And my in-laws just kind of sat there and looked at me. And then I remember praying. I was just saying, God, please do not let me die from breakfast. Help me be able to breathe and catch my breath. And he very clearly answered me that everything was going to be okay. And that kind of helped me calm down and slow down my breathing enough where the allergic reaction just started to pass and I was able to breathe again better. So after that incident, I was thinking, man, we should go to the hospital. We should go to the doctor's office. I didn't know until that point. I know now that I have allergy issues. I didn't know then. But I was thinking, we probably better get back into town. But there wasn't even question about going to town. It was, everybody get in the car, it's time to go to meeting. And I remember sitting in that car, driving to meeting, just thinking, I should not be going to Sunday morning meeting. Why are they insisting that I'm going to Sunday morning? I need to go to the doctor. Like, I need to go to the emergency room. My throat just closed up and I couldn't breathe. But that wasn't even a question that they had in their minds to like take me to the hospital. It was just all about getting to meeting. And I remember, I've always thought of that afterward. I thought about it for years afterward, thinking, why was it so important that we do not miss meeting, even if it's for somebody's, not able to breathe? I just thought, that's such a strange thing. And that kind of sat in my mind. It went in the back of my mind, but it kind of sat in my mind. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was that I was very into, when I was growing up, I was very into singing. I was very into Christian music. I would always go to see bands when they came to town. I traveled elsewhere to see bands, like with my youth group. I loved to be able to sing. I would sing at youth group. And then when my parents helped plant a church, I would help lead the worship service sometimes, because singing is just something that is just very dear to my heart and something that God gave me that brings me joy. After I started going to meetings, I remember the first couple times listening to the hymns. I always listen to music at least once or twice before I am able to sing it, because I've got to catch the tune. And I remember thinking, man, I don't know very many of these hymns. Like, this is kind of weird that I grew up listening to Christian music my entire life and I still don't know these hymns. And I just thought, well, there's no way that I could know all the hymns. So these are just ones that I haven't heard before. And so I just thought that was kind of weird. And then sometimes they'd start singing a hymn and I'd think, oh, I know this one. I know this one. I'll be able to sing this. And they'd get so far into it. And I was thinking, well, I know this tune, but I don't know these words. I guess I don't actually know this song. Maybe this tune is from something else. Or it was very confusing, but there was just something in me that it seems so crazy to look back and think about it, but I never sang no gospel meetings, no Sunday morning, no Wednesday night. I never sang. And I love to sing, and I would never sing during that. And I did not think about it as a red flag until after I left. I just thought, oh, I don't know this song, or oh, I'm shy. I don't want to sing with other people that have this song memorized in their heart. And I just would kind of, push it off. Lots of things I would just push it off and push it to the side because I didn't really want to think about it. So a couple years are kind of going by and I started having another issue with going to meetings. And it seemed like I want to say it was mostly Wednesday nights and Sundays, but I really think it was all of them. I would start feeling like I couldn't breathe, my heart would just feel like it was pounding out of my chest. And this is after I had gone and got myself diagnosed with allergies, and my allergies are fairly severe. And so I would just think, oh, is this a allergic reaction or what is it? Now I know that I was having panic attacks. Before I would go into meeting, I was having some kind of panic attack. I didn't recognize it back then, but now after having gone through a lot of counseling and stuff, I can say that I was having panic attacks before we would go into meetings. And I think it's weird because I didn't really have a reason to, other than something in my soul was telling me that something wasn't right here. And even though I didn't realize it in my mind, my soul and my spirit knew that something wasn't right. The devil was at work doing something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I was just thinking, oh, this must be allergies or something weird is going on. And sometimes the panic attacks would be so bad and we'd be sitting in the car driving to whatever meeting it was, and I just couldn't, I could not bring myself to go in. I would sit in the car and try to sit there and breathe out my whatever was going on, my panic attack, while David would just go into meeting and I would just sit in the car the whole time. And it was not a comfortable time, and just really weird experiences that I was having. Like I said, now looking back, I can see that as like this, almost this spiritual warfare, right? Like this was going on and I was not even aware of what was going on with my spirit. But anyway, so the years went on. I continued to have a lot of judgment from other people, mostly younger girls or girls my age that I went to meeting with. But we developed relationships with other couples. There were some couples that we became really good friends with, and some couples that were our age, and some couples that were older that I really appreciated their time that they spent with us. They'd have us over for meals and we'd have them over for meals, and it was nice to have other examples of a good marriage and have friendship and build that fellowship and stuff. That was something that I had been looking for so long. So that was really good. But I just continued to have all of these struggles with the panic attacks and everything that was going on. And David and I did foster care. Just a few years into our marriage, we decided to start doing foster care. And I remember people saying to me, "Oh, it's so good that you're doing foster care because this might be the only chance those kids get to hear the gospel." And I was just thinking, that's such a funny statement to me, because the only kids that we took care of were babies. So, well, yes, they were there and came to meetings with us and stuff. I don't think that they were comprehending what was going on, but I always just thought that was a funny statement, and that was another thing that I just kind of tucked in the back of my mind. Oh, what an odd thing to say. So I put that aside, but one thing, we ended up adopting our oldest son through foster care, and he was a drug baby, and he had colic and stuff really bad, so he was not a quiet baby at all. He was very loud, and this was always very prevalent during, especially Sunday morning meeting. He was very loud, and I would see the other parents, especially in Sunday morning meetings, and they would, their little tiny toddler or little tiny child or baby would make some little noise, and away they'd take that other child and they'd take it into the other room that we were, the room next to ours, so that they wouldn't be in there, and you could hear them in there just spanking or hitting or whatever they were doing, and the child would scream and cry. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I don't understand this, because I feel like when we're raising children, we should raise them to want to come to church and to love to come to church, so they love to listen to stories about Jesus and learn more about Jesus and, want that for themselves. I want them to feel like church is this welcoming place where they don't have fear and they don't have shame. They want to be there just as much as we do. And so watching those parents do that to their kids, it was just, I could never do that to my kid. I could never do that to my child. I didn't want to be that parent, and we would get all the looks in Sunday morning meeting especially, but we'd get all these looks from other people while our baby was making noise and he was being so loud and stuff. But there was no way I was ever going to hit him or flick him in the head or anything else that was going on. I was not doing any of that, because I was going to raise my child so that he loved going to church and that he loved Jesus. And I would never do that to a child. And David, we were on the same page with that. That was not something he ever did or ever asked me to do or anything like that. But there was that stress, and then there was that additional judgment from other people that, would look at us and be like, oh, well, they're not sitting quietly. They're not letting the Spirit in, and their child is so obnoxious, and like you could just feel all the judgment on you. And I was like, I I don't know that I can do this. I don't know that I can continue on if this is the kind of environment that I'm supposed to raise my child in. And, I'd been raised in a happy Christian environment where there was vacation Bible school and children's church and things that I loved to be a part of, Sunday school, Awana, all of that stuff where I was glad to be able to go to church because I felt like church was about me too, like that there was things there for me, and those things helped me, love Jesus and affirm my salvation and, all of that stuff. That was really important to me, and I wanted my child to be raised that way. I wanted my future children to be raised that way. I didn't want them to be raised to hate going to church and to, despise us for taking them to a place where they didn't feel welcome. And so that was a big thing that weighed heavy on my mind. But I didn't talk to David about it, besides the fact that I knew he was on the same page as me, that we weren't going to, punish our children for making noise in meetings. But at the same time, I didn't want that to be like a source of contention, that I didn't like what other people were doing. Sometimes we would talk about it a little bit or whatever, but it wasn't something that I was going to let come between us, because I knew we were on the same page. And so I didn't really want to bring it up that, well, this is not really the church environment, that I want my kids to be raised in. So I just it weighed heavy on me, but it wasn't something that I was going to let tear my family apart. All of these things were starting to compound: the panic attacks, the thing with the kids, the way that I was treated, all of the judgment. It was weighing so heavy on my soul. And I was trying so hard to be the best that I could be, and to be the best person that went to meetings and do the best that I could, and host all of the workers that I could in my house and do whatever I could. But I never felt like it was enough. I never felt like I was doing good enough, and that there wasn't enough. And another thing that weighed heavy on me was that when I was growing up, I've always, service is one of my spiritual gifts. I love doing things for other people. Like I mentioned before, I went on mission trips with the youth group. I served in soup kitchens. By the time I was either 17 or 18, I had gotten the Presidential Award for volunteering. I loved to help other people. That's just something that God has put in my heart, and I think it's something that's important. Looking at people that go to meetings, I didn't see any outreach. I didn't see any service. I didn't see any, anyone wanting to help the poor or anything. There was nothing actively going on to either bring people to the church or, to reach out to people that were different or anything like that. There was nothing. And I do remember bringing it up to David a couple times, and he would just say, well, that's not really something we do collectively as a church. If somebody wants to do that on their own, then that's okay. But that's not really something we do together. And the answer didn't really satisfy me. I felt like the church should be a body, and we should be helping other people and reaching out to other people. Even within, our own body, there should be this helpfulness, and that wasn't there. And so all of that stuff was just, it was so heavy on my soul for so long. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't want to be the one, that broke our family apart. We had gone through so much with adopting our son and everything else that we had. And I was just like, I don't want to be that person. I can't do it. I'm just going to suck it up and keep on going. And so I did. And then one day we had 2 sister workers over for lunch. A younger one and an older one, and I can't remember the older one's name now. I can't remember any of their names, but anyway, felt like I, gave everybody a nice lunch and I was a good hostess. And then when they were leaving, I walked them out to their car. And the older sister worker turned to me and she said, "You need to start coming to more meetings." She's like, "You don't understand what we're trying to do here." And I just said, "Okay." And inside my brain was just exploding. I was thinking, what on earth are you talking about? What do I not understand what you're trying to do here? What are you trying to do here? I thought, I've been going to church my entire life. I study the Bible. I, have my quiet time. I'm coming to as many meetings as I can. I'm doing all of these things. And, I felt like my relationship with God was good. And she's telling me I didn't understand. And I just thought, I don't understand what? Obviously I don't understand what you're trying to do, because I thought I was doing the right thing and I didn't verbalize any of this, but it was just exploding in my mind. And I was thinking, I don't know what else that I can do, but if I'm not understanding what they're trying to do or what you're trying to do here, I'm not going to go to more meetings. I'm just done. And I, kind of hemmed and hawed on that for a little bit, because again, I went back to, I don't want to be that person. I was raised in a house where, like, you went to church with your husband. Those were things that you did together. You studied together. You read the Bible together. You did that together. And I felt like I am going to be, this is the end of me being the good wife. And finally, I just told David, I was like, I can't go anymore. I sat him down one evening and I was just like, I don't know what to tell you. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep this up. I'm never going to measure up to whatever they're trying to measure me to. And I can't do it. I'm just done. And so I remember he just listened to everything that I said and went out in the other room. And he didn't talk to me about anything. He's just quiet. And he didn't want to discuss it. He didn't want to talk about it. And I was so heartbroken over making that decision and leaving that part of our life, and I felt like, all of the friends that we had, they're not going to understand. They're not going to want to hang out with us anymore. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I didn't leave because of theology. I didn't leave because of some major incident. I didn't know about any of this abuse stuff that was going on. I left because I knew that I had to leave, even though I didn't fully know why. I just knew that I was done and I had to leave, and I couldn't go back to that anymore. So after I left, I am so thankful that I had a foundation in growing up in church, and I went back to church with my parents and my baby. I took our baby back to church, and I went and basically felt like I was participating as a single parent. David didn't really, our relationship was not great. It wasn't bad. We still had a relationship, but we definitely didn't talk to each other about what was going on. I knew that he did not agree with me going back to church, and he was frustrated with me because I always took our son with me. I wouldn't let him take him to meetings. And like I said, it was not because I thought that he was going to do anything to him or anything to that nature whatsoever. It was just that I just did not want my child involved in that kind of situation at all. And so I knew he was mad at me about that. But I went back to church, and it was great to be back. And even though I felt like a single parent, I felt like I had a lot of support, and I had the support of my parents and other people in the church and stuff. And that was really beneficial to me. Then it was a couple months later, when I was still going to meetings, I had read something, and it was some kind of letter, and it really disturbed me. And now I don't remember what the details of the letter were, but it was obviously by, an ex-member. And I was really disturbed by what I read. And I remember bringing it up to David and saying, what is it? Like, this really bothers me. I don't like this. And, what is this person saying? Is this stuff true? And David was like, oh, no, that's an old letter that's been going around for a long time. And that's just written by somebody that they were just disgruntled and they left meetings and, they're angry ex-member. And so I had just kind of put it off. Okay, well, I can understand, when somebody's angry about something. After I left, a couple months after I left, I remembered something from that letter, and it was the term 2x2. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm going to look it up and see, because I thought, I've never heard that term before. And so I decided to go online and look it up. And that's when I learned a lot of information. I remember looking it up one day, and I just dove into everything that I found, the history of the group, the theology of the group, how the structure was. I didn't know almost any of that stuff from being in the group, because I had gone in with such rose-colored glasses that was my background. I knew my background and like where I'd come from and what I believed about things. And so I went into meetings thinking everybody else thinks the same way that I do, because you just assume, I guess. And I didn't know any of this stuff. And I remember just panicking and thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't know any of these things. Was I in a cult? Was this a cult that I was in? I was just my mind was just absolutely blown. And I remember thinking, what on earth do I do with this information? What do I do now? I was printing off everything that I could find, reading everything that I could find, ordering all the books that I could find, and just panicking. And I thought, okay, I can call my pastor. So I called up Pastor Ron and I explained to him what was going on, and I was panicking on the phone, and I remember him just saying, just calm down. I'm going to come out. We're going to talk and we're going to go over this. And so he came out to the house and I showed him everything that I had found. And I was like, my husband is in a cult. I have been in a cult. I don't even know what to do with this information. I don't know where to go from here. I don't know how to approach this. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And so he took the paperwork and he was going to go through it. And that's kind of when I started doing some pastoral counseling with him, just to kind of wrap my brain around everything. I took all the information over to my parents' house, and I remember them saying, oh, well, I'm not that surprised. Everybody seemed a little weird. And I was thinking, why didn't you tell me that something seemed weird? Why didn't you tell me a long time ago that something seemed off to you? I was so young and immature and naive, and if you could see it, how come you didn't tell me this to begin with? And, again, they just, they didn't have the information. They didn't know that it was something strange or different or off or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so that was the huge thing. And then I remember David, he'd come home from work and I would confront him about these issues, and I'd be like, well, you don't believe in the Trinity? You don't believe that in the assurance of salvation and all of this stuff? And all of this time, for years, I thought he believed the same that I did, because I never asked him what he believed. I never asked. And he's like, well, no, you can't know those things. No, I don't believe, it doesn't say that in the Bible. And I would pull up the Bible verses and I'd be like, see, look at, this is where it says this thing, and this is where it says this. And he just kind of wouldn't answer me. He just kind of pushed me, and not push me, but just kind of push it aside, and no, that's not right, and whatever. And I would try to approach the topic, but it was it was like talking to a brick wall. There was just no way I was getting through there. Nothing was going to get through that I was saying, nothing. And it was funny because at the time, Pastor Ron at church was going through the book of Galatians, and I was sitting there, and I'd sit there on Sunday and I'd have my little notebook and I'd take all these notes, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, if David could only hear this, if he could only read this book and see the things that it was saying, like he would know what's true. So after church, I would take my little notebook and I'd set it on the table and I'd leave it open to whatever we had learned about that Sunday, and I'd just leave it there just in case he'd look at it, because I was desperate. I was thinking, I need anything to just show him, what to read or what's right, anything, because I just felt nothing is getting through. And I remember we had meetings, me and David and Pastor Ron, we'd all get together and we'd try to, conquer some topic that I just couldn't get off my chest. And David was he was so adamant that, he just believed this way, and he didn't have stuff to back it up. He just this is right and this is wrong. And it was so frustrating. It was just everything was intensely frustrating to me. And I just thought, there's no way that I'm going to get through to him. He's not going to listen to me. And every Sunday was the worst day of the week. I would go to church, David would go to meeting, and then we'd come home and we wouldn't talk to each other for the rest of the day because he didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want to be questioned by me. He didn't want to talk about the things that I was so excited to be learning about and reading about. He didn't want to talk about any of that. And so it was just awkward. And sometimes that would carry on into the week, especially if I did try to bring something up. Our relationship was just not good. We were not communicating. It was just a bad time. And I remember after this went on for months, and I felt so exhausted. I was mentally exhausted from trying to manage all this and trying to be a good mom and trying to be a good wife while trying to deal with all of this stuff. And spiritually, I was exhausted because there was this battle that was just waging between us, and everything else. It was awful. And so I decided that I needed a break. I didn't want divorce or anything. That was not something that ever went through my mind. I just needed a breather. I needed a break from everything. I needed to be able to collect my thoughts. I needed good fellowship with other believers that were strong in their faith. And so I made arrangements with a friend of mine in another state, and me and our son, we were going to go live with her for a little while. I just needed to get away. And I didn't tell David any of these plans. I knew that it was something that I needed to do, because if I didn't do it, I was just going to continue to get frustrated, and that wasn't going to be good for either of us. So I needed this spiritual and mental refresher. I was all ready. I was set to go and do this. And that's when David told me he was leaving. And it literally came out of the blue. I did not expect it whatsoever. In fact, he told me when I was driving my car, I almost went in the ditch. I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. I had no idea that he was actually seeking and researching and doing all these things. And I'm not going to go into detail on his story. He can link his story in here if you haven't already watched it. But he left meetings and he stopped going. And unfortunately, that didn't solve all of our problems. That was kind of just the beginning of us working on them together. So we were not on the same page. He was a new Christian, and I had been saved for a very long time. So we were not on the same page spiritually. He was excited to dig into things and to learn more and to read things in context and, just dive into all that. But at the same time, everything was just so new for our family. Like our family dynamic was different, and we had just gone through that period of struggling where we weren't communicating and talking, and we needed to build that back up again. So we decided that, and I should say too, that I think what happened after I left was that he just kind of made a bunch of excuses for me, and people that people that knew me knew that I was no longer going to meetings, but he would just kind of make excuses to other people that didn't know me so well. So they didn't really fully know that I had left. But then after he left, that was when, there's no other word for it other than we were excommunicated. People wouldn't talk to us anymore. They no longer came to our house. There was no meals. There was no getting together. All of our friendships were just immediately dissolved. It was done. All of the years that we had spent building relationships and getting to know other families and other couples, nobody wanted anything to do with us. We would go to the store, and if they'd see us, down at the end of an aisle or something, they'd just turn around and walk away, and they wouldn't even look at us. David's grandma passed away, and we went to the funeral, and that was kind of the first time that, this was maybe 2 years or so after we had both left, or after he had left. We went to the funeral, and that was kind of the first time that we had been around a lot of the people for quite some time that we had gone to meetings with, and because of course it was a very 2x2 funeral. And I just remember, I remember feeling so spiritually overwhelmed at that funeral, because they weren't talking about his grandma, and they weren't talking about assurance of salvation, she's in heaven, or any of the normal things that you might hear at a funeral. It was all about, she accepted the workers as the way, and all of this kind of stuff. And I remember I had to walk out, and we had our second son by then, and I had to take him in another room, and I just remember sitting in that other room and rocking him and singing Jesus Loves Me, because I was just feeling like, it's all back here again, like everything is coming back to me, and all of this spiritual warfare, and like, this is where the devil is right now. And I had to block it out, and so that's the way I did it. And then I remember after the funeral, we were immediate family. And so you kind of, everybody usually talks to you, or they shake your hand, or, give you hugs or whatever. There was none of that. They'd shake hands with the family, the rest of David's family that still went to meetings, and they would walk right on by us, and they wouldn't even look at us. They wouldn't shake our hands. They wouldn't talk to us. They just absolutely ignored us. And that was, it's so hard to go through it was the formative years of our marriage, to go through all of that. And all of these people that we had built relationships with were just gone, just like that. They wanted nothing to do with us anymore. And so we decided that the best thing that we could do was remove ourselves from this place and remove ourselves from this situation. And we decided to move. We moved all the way across the state. We moved to an area where we knew that there wasn't any meetings. There wasn't any other friends. We needed to start over. And then that's when David he kind of started being counseled by a pastor at that time to work on things like being the head of the household, because when you go to meetings, basically the workers are the head of the household. They're the ones that tell your family what to do and how to do things. And which is crazy if you really think about it, because workers have never been married. They don't have children, and yet they're the ones telling you how to run your life. And anyway, so that was something that David worked a lot on, and I went and got myself into counseling. It was definitely something that I needed. I needed to address all the stuff that had happened, all of the stuff that I had seen, all the stuff that I had felt. That's where I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and some kind of PTSD from my time in meetings. And I had to do a lot of therapy to work on stuff. And then when I felt like we had conquered one thing, then it would bring up this other thing that I didn't even know was lurking back there. And there's so many, behaviors that you don't even realize consciously. But it was all there, and I had to work through all of that. And I have been in and out of counseling for the last 10 years. Like I said, we kind of work through one thing, and then I'll take a break from a while, and then something else will come up, and I need to work through that as well. So that's kind of been an ongoing process. One thing that I forgot to mention, and I want to go back and do it because it's relevant to my story, but I told you in the beginning that when I went to meetings, I never sang. I never participated in the music because there was just something about it, and I just never did, even though I absolutely loved music. And I remember after I left, I still had all of my CDs from when I was growing up, all my Christian music. And I remember putting a CD into the player on my car and listening to the music. And it was some CD that I had really loved. And I remember sitting there thinking, just having the most intense feelings of guilt. And I was thinking, what on earth is that? Why am I feeling guilty for listening to Christian music? And wasn't until many sessions of therapy later that I understood that, like, Christian music in the 2x2, you don't listen to Christian music. Christian music is bad. Those people just want to make money off of you, and they're not doing anything to further the gospel, and you shouldn't listen to that and whatever. And even though I didn't believe that, somehow it was still ingrained in my brain that was wrong. And then it brought up all of these feelings of guilt and stuff that I had to, from listening to it, that I had to overcome. And it was crazy how all of this brainwashing, for lack of a better term, like, happened so subtly without me knowing what was even going on in my own mind. But that was a crazy realization for me. I had to deal with a lot of years of going through more guilt because I felt like, I was that girl that studied her Bible and went to Bible camp every summer and helped with mission trips. How on earth did I get wrapped up in this? Like, how did I not know? And honestly, I believe it was because I didn't ask the right questions. There's some, part of that is, like, I wasn't taught to ask the right questions. And the other part is on me, that I just didn't think enough to ask the right questions. I just put everything aside, put my feelings aside, put the red flags aside, and tried to just continue on. And I shouldn't have done that. It's an afterthought now because you can't go back and change the past. But I can tell people now what that was and how easy it was to get drawn into something that I really had no idea what it was, but I let myself get fully immersed in it. And that was something that I hopefully, when I do share my story with my friends and my family, I hope they take out of it by remembering to ask questions, and really dive deep into things before they join a new church or before they go to a new Bible study or anything like that. So David told me, I asked him, what questions do you need me to answer since I'm not going to let you do the interview? And he said that he just wanted to make sure that I share what advice I would have for someone that still goes to meetings or someone that has left. So if you still go to meetings and you're watching this, I really want you to take from this that don't push off those red flags. Don't just put it to the side. Ask questions. It cannot hurt in a healthy group to ask questions. You should ask questions. You should always ask questions. Even if you don't go to meetings anymore or whatever, still ask questions of everything. Because if you don't ask questions, you won't do your research and you won't look it up in the Bible and have an answer for why you believe what you believe. Ask questions. And if your worker cannot tell you the answer to the question, or if they tell you something and you look it up and the context to that entire chapter has nothing to do with the verse that they gave you, continue to dive in and keep on asking questions until you find out the answer for yourself. Don't just accept somebody's answer as what's truth. Look at the Bible and learn what the real truth is straight from the Bible and not straight from any person. And if you did go to meetings or any kind of legalistic group and you have left and you're feeling completely lost and like, what do I do next? Where do I go from here? I don't know how to rebuild my life. I understand that because that's where we were at. That's where I was at when I left. And the first thing I did after I left and realized all of this stuff was to join a support group. And it was an online group. I don't think it exists anymore. But it was an online support group for people that had left meetings. And I needed that. I needed to be able to connect with other people that had been through the same experiences that I had been through, and that we could share good stories with, and we could share bad stories with, but somebody that understood that background and had been through what we'd already been through. That was very important. And the other thing that was really important for me was the counseling, and still is important to this day. Even if you have a counselor that doesn't know about meetings, that doesn't quite have that same background, there's still things that they can help you with that you may not even realize that you're dealing with. But there's still lots of things that they can help you with. And if you go to counseling and you don't like your first counselor, just go find a different one. I had to go through several before I found the right fit for me, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not every person is going to mesh with every other person, so don't be afraid to tell a counselor, this isn't working for me. I need to find someone else that I do feel comfortable with and I do feel safe sharing this information with, because the things that you're going to bring up and the things that you're going to have to relive as you go through counseling, you need to be with someone that you can trust, and that you feel safe with, and that is going to validate those feelings and the things that you went through, and then help you grow and move past it. So that's what I would recommend. And if you can't find a support group of people that have been through the same thing that you've been through, and you don't want to use one of their groups on Facebook, I'm personally not on any of the ex-friends Facebook groups, because it's too much too much drama for me. I can't relive that much on a daily basis, so that's not something that I participate in. But I know that a lot of people that have done these interviews here on David's channel have put their contact information out there, so don't feel like you need to hesitate in getting a hold of them, because even if you have one other person that understands what you've been through and you can have some kind of fellowship with that person, it's incredibly helpful. And I will let David put my information down in the description too. So if you feel like you've connected to some part of my story, I'd be happy to talk with you and connect with you in whatever way is helpful. We can talk on the phone, or we can talk through email, and you can ask me all the questions. I'm an open book. I might not share everything on this video, but if you want to connect on a one-to-one basis, then I'd be happy to talk to you. Anyway, so like I said at the beginning, I know that my story is different than other people that have shared on David's channel so far. I also know that it's important that you find that person that you have something in common with and have that, some similarities and some paths that cross and stuff. And so that's why I went ahead and decided that it was okay for me to share my story this way. I hope that you gained some hope from this. I want to share one more thing before I'm done, and that is when I was not going to meetings and David was still going, I remember talking to him about joy, and I was like, I remember asking him, where's the joy in a meeting? Where's the joy that we're so happy that we're part of God's family? Where's the joy in the music and the joy in our prayer and our thanksgiving? And where is the joy? And I remember him telling me, joy is not a word that's in the Bible. And then I proceeded to show him all of the places where joy was in the Bible. But he honestly was raised to think that joy was not there. Joy was not a part of our of our human life, joy was not something that existed. It was works and working towards our salvation and trying to be perfect and all of that kind of stuff. But I just want you to know that there is joy, and there is joy in this life, and we can be thankful to God for so many things that He's given us, even though He's brought us out of so much. When we tell people our story and all the things that we've been through in our life, they're like, man, you've already lived so many lives, you've gone through so much, but God had us go through this, maybe because He just wanted me to share this with you today. And so even if this brings some kind of hope or some kind of joy to just one person that watches this interview, it had all been worth it. Everything that I went through and still, have to deal with everything. It's worth it for me to be able to share hope and joy with you. I hope that you got that from this and you felt like there's someone else out there that you can connect with. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch this.